Okay, I'm going to make a prediction. I'm going to predict that, and I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to predict that Iran is is going to be attacked by Israel, and Israel is going to use the excuse as um, right to defend themselves, right? Like they've always done. I believe that what's going to happen here is that when I'm not sure the exact escalation, but when Iran has a ground invasion into Lebanon, and they're so-called softening up and shaping the battlefield, and they're doing all of their bunker busting bombs on civilizations and all the Hezbollah under the house and under the bed and under the bathroom sink missiles and all their excuses, just as they have with Gaza and the West Bank. They're either going to be attacked, they're either going to attack and do some more assassinations in Iran, or something's going to happen in that period of ground invasion. And I predict that Israel will be the first country to use tactical nuclear weapons in warfare. And the reason I make that prediction is they have shown clearly that they have no limits on their free license to so-called self-defense. They've Netanyahu, the man from Poland who's Jewish and I have to try not to make a video about all the bad adjectives I have about him. But Netanyahu, the butcher, the man who stood up in front of the UN, and every time he speaks, it was even more. I didn't even hear his speech, because the first speech in the Congress was so revolting and so much like a recreation of Hitler's speech in front of his parliaments and his crowds, and to see the standing ovations. And if you took the words out of his speech and you just looked at the fact that here's somebody being accused of war crimes standing up and having standing ovations in the American government, which is giving billions and billions of dollars to a country that has free healthcare, and they have some of the most advanced. They have a nuclear trifecta: nuclear submarines, they have air delivery, they have missiles. If you fly over Israel with a jet and it's subsonic, it takes like less than 4 minutes to cross the country. And yet the small country has such a great wealth. It has achieved things that many larger countries don't have. Nuclear weapons. They don't have that kind of monetary power. But here they are, at the height of his power, to have people like the biggest oligarch in the world, Elon Musk, bow down and kiss the ring and wear the necklace. And Elon Musk, the guy that's not afraid to speak out against governments, all of a sudden he's quite submissive, isn't he? That's a raw. And not only that, we have our congressmen that are quite submissive. We have both candidates quite submissive, fighting over who loves Israel the best. And that carries over to the arena of war and genocide, in which you don't have to worry about shooting reporters. You don't have to worry about shooting anybody. You could shoot people in the UN. You could call the UN health organizations terrorists. You could tell you could call the international court. You could call the International Court of Justice. You could call them anti-Semitic. Wonder what Hitler's. Wonder if Hitler could have done that. Hitler could have said, "Well, you're anti-Aryan, we are the master race. You anti-master racers." Well, basically, Netanyahu has a platform in which not only does he have the right to self-defense, he has everybody in the American empire, all the subjugates, all the people in Europe, and all the people in all the America's their hegemonic control of all their vassal states. The ones whose pipelines they destroy, who they tell, "Oh, we will destroy that pipeline. Trust me, we'll find a way, even if it belongs." It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you destroy large infrastructure projects and blame Russia. Russia and Putin and all the wars happening between Russia and Ukraine and NATO, nobody on any side of that war is blatantly destroying and shooting. It doesn't matter who you rooting for. The imperialistic puppet Zelensky, and I'm not going to talk about cocaine and stuff about him, but he's an actor. He's a comedian. He plays a piano. Okay, we're not going to talk about what he plays the piano with. Go look it up. But even Zelensky, with all of his power from NATO, you're not seeing, even when he went into Russia, you're not seeing the wide-scale destructions of civilians in that arena. You're not seeing carpet bombing houses. You're not seeing schools and hospitals being blown up. You hear a couple, "Oh yeah, well, Russia shot a hospital." Oh, and then Russia says, "Oh, it was the missile defense that fell on a." And then you hear even Russia, Putin's never attacked hospitals and schools. I think there was a rocket that hit a school or a hospital, but there was a debate about that. So even if you support Putin or support Zelensky, even in that big arena of the big bad communists and the powerful NATO, even their arena, there's none of them that are shooting the press, that are telling the UN that they're anti-Semitic. None of that's not. We're talking about nuclear. Putin's revised his nuclear strike policy, right? And even in this arena where we talk about nuclear, we still have people that are generally humane. They have a sense of humanity. And we even talk about boundaries, and we talk about maybe, we talk about the Minsk Accord and talk about parts of Russia and Ukraine. But okay, now let's jump over to Israel. Israel's going to the United Nations with a paper, with a map that says blessed and cursed, and with the nonchalant delivery, like how is this different than Hitler and his Lebensraum? You know what Lebensraum is for all the people that are uneducated in the U.S., right? All the people that don't know, the 21 million Russians died fighting Hitler for his Lebensraum, living space. is what Hitler called it. How is that not synonymous with blessed land? The Abraham Accord is what he calls it, right? Is that, I didn't even listen to his new speech because it hurts my ears, and at the time he was doing that new speech, he just dropped what 10 or it doesn't matter 10 or 8 or 16 1,000 or 2,000 pound bombs on 4 or 6. How many is okay? How many is too many that's not okay? 10-story apartment complexes. He dropped bunker buster bombs on apartment complexes. Said that there's a command and control underneath it, just like you said there was Hamas underneath every hospital and in every school, and he bombed 65 to last, 80, I don't know, 80% of the schools are all destroyed in Gaza. Hospitals are all destroyed. The they're all the government offices, the offices of records, the anything a culture uses when you're creating genocide and you're killing all the culture, you're erasing the culture, you're erasing the people off the earth, their museums, you're bombing mosques, before you bomb them, you deface them, you're bombing schools, you're bombing hospitals, after you bomb them, you say, look, there was a Hamas in there, and people are starving, and you're bombing the people in the tents, you're having move. I mean, literally what he's doing before he got to Lebanon and in Lebanon is what what Putin and Zelensky, despite their aggression, they're not even they're not. America with their shock and awe in Iraq. Oh yeah, America could kill 2.4 million people in the last 30 years of their influence in the Middle East, if you look it up, or nearly 11 million people since the Korean War, which is 98% of the Holocaust. You could look that up, put that all together. That took a long time for me to come up with those numbers. But anyhow, shock and awe. America had no problem. America had no problem with leaving how many millions of people to starve in Afghanistan as they held the country's national reserves in hostage and wouldn't allow them to have their own money, right? But what happens in Afghanistan is so far off the map for the average person, they don't know. Half of most Americans here think that Russia invaded Afghanistan and America fought them. Well, they don't even realize that Afghanistan had a socialist government at the time, and that socialist government invited Russia, the USSR at the time, to come in and help with radical extremists and to help them with their infrastructure. They were invited, like they were invited into Syria. They didn't go there and set up illegal bases called the Conoco base and steal Syria's oil like America's doing right now, just like America in 1932 in Shanghai when the Marines went up with Smedley Butler for, was that Texaco or Conoco too? Well, Conoco's a pretty evil empire too. But anyways, not as evil as Netanyahu, right? So, we see, I digress here, I'm losing my train of thought. We see no recourse, just full throttle, Hamas in every closet, flat out carpet bombing and destruction. It's not like ours over here. We were talking about the shock and awe. Like the shock and awe of America, but way more. And you know what's funny is back when they carpet bombed before in 2006 when they when they were creating Hezbollah. You know, Hezbollah, the terrorists. You know, the people that are we're taught as terrorists in the United States, but now after what's happening in Lebanon, you might realize that, well, actually Hezbollah was the ones that went and were fighting against Israel because Israel was carpet bombing their country and the guerrilla warfare, and they managed to survive. The best air force in the region, right? Well, at that time they had F-16s. Do you know what Israel has right now with their right to defend themselves? They have F-35 strike fighter. F-30. Remember the F-35s, the jet that was so expensive that America lost its education, and they switched to Common Core, and they kept lowering the test scores. And one time they had a whole bunch of F-35s in Florida during a hurricane, and the hurricane destroyed them all. And Lockheed Martin there, and I don't know how many hundreds of billions of dollars these F-35s cost. But these F-35s are the bee's knees, the cat's pajamas. They've got computer AI in these that they determine places to attack. They're like a AWACS in a plane. They're fully, yes, they have a pilot, but the compute power of these planes here, they're not just like fly by. Sure, they got a lot in their plane, but did you think that there's no database in some room, no satellites, no information sharing? How do you think these F-35s fly? Well, these F-35s fly with a lot of help from Washington. And you have to think, well, Washington, well, you know why Putin says that if there's a long-range missile into Russia, that will evoke their nuclear response, right? Well, against NATO, because Ukraine doesn't have the long range over the horizon and all these other technological marvels. They don't have satellites. Who has satellites? The U.S. has satellites. So that means if NATO, if there was a long range missile attack on Russia, that would be NATO doing it. So NATO would be directly engaged, right? So, but in Hezbollah, and when they just took out the leader, this great wise man who's demonized as a terrorist from people that have never heard his speech because he stood up to American empire in the same manner that Nelson Mandela was demonized a terrorist before he won. But America is saying we had no idea. We had no idea that a bunch of F-35s were going to drop many of the 2,000-pound bombs which we supplied on Lebanon. Well, you supplied the weapons. You're doing the logistics. You're doing the compute. You're doing the support of the F-35. What do you think we just give Israel F-35? No, yes, we do give them F-35s, and I don't know if we're giving them or America's a vassal state or Israel's a vassal state. That's up for debate. Or maybe the real masters don't have a home country like corporations don't. But anyways, number one, unlike Russia, Lebanon's not going to say, hey, we are going to alter our nuclear strike doctrine, so if you attack us, that will evoke our nuclear react. Well, obviously, they're just a bunch of common people that are fighting to survive after being divided up after the fall of the Ottoman Empire and having land redistributed and cut up, and one people are divided into two. So they're people in Palestine, which are their neighbors, and their ancestors are being bombed, even though they're called Lebanon now. Who created that name actually after the fall of the Ottoman Empire and after the colonialists cut it up? Imagine America had a civil war, and it did end up in North and South, two different countries, but and then some third country comes in and say, "Hey, I'm gonna take over California, and you guys are gonna be my bitch, and I'm gonna kill the South, and the North can watch." So they're poor, and they can't fight back. They don't have nuclear weapons. Ironically, how does how does Israel have nuclear weapons from that supposed nuclear reactor that the French gave in 1963 that became holier than thou and couldn't be part of the IEA or the INA, and we couldn't have inspections without pre-announced that you were coming, and to the point that the U.S. Department of Energy said these inspections are worthless because they set up fake control panels and they could see there was something else going on in there. All the Jews that spit on the Christians. Have you seen Jewish people spit on Christians and the Christians that exist in the West Bank? Have you seen them walk by the old Christian places and spit on the ground? You know, they tell you that, oh, those are religious wars over there. But no, they're not, because there's plenty of Christian people in Lebanon and everywhere else. There's all kinds of different religious people, but we have one point in which we have one situation in which Israel, with the full support, unbridled support from the United States, is using F-35s, the most advanced fighter America has ever created, with all the weapon systems involved. After they, I believe that they're using the same planes to drop bombs on tents in Gaza. On tents, right? Right? Can you believe that they're using these advanced fighters to drop bombs? So this isn't the tippy-toeing like, oh, it might have been a missile defense rocket that hit the school on accident, like Russia and Ukraine, these huge confrontation of NATO and Russia that was the Cold War turned hot, this monumental conflict that even these two actors in that conflict are cautious about human rights. But Israel, they don't even pretend to have that worry. They will drop bombs and fly on hospitals, commit genocide, and they'll go to Lebanon, and they'll go to Iraq, and they'll go to, who else next? Well, number one, since they're not scared of the United States, obviously the United States gives them a whole bunch of money. It's not like they're poor. It's not like they're a starving country. Have you seen what Tel Aviv looks like? Have you seen the high-rise buildings there? How does that look different than any other large metropolis from a successful first world country? But even though America's giving them more money than any other country, I don't know. Maybe that's not true. I don't have the, but they're giving them a lot of money, and they're giving them F-35 fighters like there's no tomorrow, and they're giving them all the support that intel's, and they're giving them their consent. They can't give the consent to Russia, to Ukraine, to Zelensky to use long-range bombers on Ukraine, but they can give the consent to Israel to use anything. And we don't know that Israel didn't tell us they're going to attack Lebanon. They didn't tell us they're going to take out Hezbollah's leader. We didn't know, but we agree. And that's a good thing that they did it. Come on. So you could ask about Wag the Dog and who's controlling who. Is Israel controlling the U.S. or the U.S. controlling Israel? But that's up for debate. But I can tell you one thing. It seems like whatever Israel does, and I've theorized that America's obviously has no other product and it's losing its dominance. And they say that China can attack Taiwan in 2027, so we must confront China before 2027. I've heard that being part of the American military doctrine. I've also, you could see what is America's national product is war and defense. What when they can't exploit third world countries like they used to. We have a decline in American empire. So try to attack Russia on one front, that's clear. It seems easy. Try to attack China. China's 5,000 years of wisdom. They don't take the hook and sinker. And they want to attack Iran. But Iran is also a very old and smart country. And I believe the U.S. believes that Iran is a way to get through to China, especially with the Belt and Road Initiative. I mean, it's not, and you got to remember, who are they fighting? America's fighting the EU. When the EU united, this was a threat to American industry. And what did they do? They took out Nord Stream. Germany's no longer a threat. Volkswagen's closing factories in Germany for the first time. So we have a wounded animal, the United States, in a corner. There's multi-front war. And I don't know if they're lapdog. I don't know who's the lapdog in this situation, Israel or the U.S. But Israel has clearly shown that they have no reserve in attacking Palestine and Gaza and West Bank. They have no reserve in opening the fronts on Lebanon. The only reason why they don't go full throttle on Syria is because Syria invited Russia in to has a naval base there, just like Afghanistan did. And I don't think Israel has the balls to fight Russia. Come on, why would you fight Russia? Just like America's good at take out Libya, take out every other country that you feel like you could walk all over, even though Afghanistan kicked their ass out of 20 years, and so did Vietnam. America's got a losing battle on the guerrilla warfare background, right? But now we come to the meat and potatoes. Netanyahu has used World War II several times, and he listed the attack on Pearl Harbor and the use of atom bombs as an excusable method of warfare for the United States. And he quoted that. He said it several times. Look up his speeches. He has shown no reserve attacking Lebanon and Palestine. No reserve. He's always been justified. He stood up in front of the United Nations and he gave his Lebensraum speech, just like Hitler, blessed and cursed, without any kind of even though everybody in the UN walked out. During the speech, people are right now questioning the UN's mandate, and they're questioning the whole function of the UN. Turkey's getting ready to join BRICS, and a lot of other countries are getting ready to join BRICS. And you even heard the talk about, well, if we join BRICS, maybe we leave the UN. So the UN's a joke. And our current world dynamics are changing right now. And Netanyahu has already put on the table an example of the atomic bomb in Japan. Remember when Japan didn't invite Israel to their Hiroshima celebration, and because they didn't invite Israel, America said, we're not going to go to your whatever year anniversary that we fucking dropped an atom bomb on you. We're not going to show up because you're not inviting Israel. This is how much America in the West bows down to Israel, whoever the boss is. So they had no problem in taking out the leader of Hezbollah. They have no problem in taking out as many civilians as they can. They've done first strikes on Iran. Their policy did not allow anybody else to have a nuclear bomb. It is thought that they have about 400 nuclear missiles. 400. My guess is that the odds are likely the U.S. will use a tactical nuke on Iran. Number one, because uh, Netanyahu's on a power trip like Hitler with Lebensraum, and he sees it as a justifiable reason to protect Israel against the dangers from Iran, and Iran already showed them on that conflict. And I believe that's why Iran is not attacking after we saw that last exchange, and they used some hypersonic missiles and they overwhelmed the dome. I believe that Israel has used, they will use Iran's previous attack as an excuse to protect their citizens, to justify the tactical nuke use in Iran. And I believe that the U.S. will support that because the U.S. is doing a study of the feasibility of using tactical nukes in the theater in Ukraine with Russia and China. Somebody needs to do it first. And isn't it likely that everybody thinks, even though the if you look at the nuclear doctrine book, where the whole world dies after an hour and 30 minutes after the first nuclear strike, but if Israel, is being the tiny country that they are, is in a limited exchange, that kind of puts a sandbox around where we're launching nuclear tactical nukes from. I mean, every country, we got the Cold War, we got these preset nuclear launch scenarios where if a communist country launches on America, we've got these targets and we've got their missile silos zeroed out. But the U.S. might be using the Israel as a test bed, because if Israel launches a nuclear strike, that's a strategic ambiguity, which makes it look like America did not say, oh, we didn't say launch a nuke. We didn't know they're attacking Hezbollah. Of course they know. But that allows them to separate themselves from Israel if Israel is going to be attacked in nuclear retribution. The only other Muslim state I know that has nuclear weapons is Pakistan, even though this isn't really an Islamic war. But if Pakistan attacked Israel, then of course India could attack Pakistan, and then boom, we're dead. We're all dead. Then it all begins. But I would guess that there's a high possibility that the first tactical nuke use that we ever have will be from Israel. I hope I'm wrong. And if it doesn't happen, Israel's holding these nuclear cards as they go on their journey to create their Abraham Accord and to create their own version of Lebensraum. And for all the people that think that people are barbaric in Lebanon and the Middle East, why don't you take a look at the situation that they've been living in since the 1980s? Excuse me. Why don't you really delve in to what the Islamic Revolution was about and why they overthrew the Shah? Why don't you look at a lot of this stuff that we're taught in American schools is patriotic and democracy and freedom fighters? And why don't you look at the Contras? Remember the Iran Contra? Isn't it funny, in all these things we don't hear the Iran Contra? When is the last time you ever heard that on media? When is the last time you hear in a classroom it taught that it was America's policy to destabilize 7 countries in the Middle East after 5 years after the start of the invasion of Iraq again, right? When do we hear about all these policies in America, about when Madeleine Albright got up there and said it was worth it to kill 500,000 kids? When do we talk about that in history? When do we talk about any of that? Well, it's, thank you for your time. It's my prediction. I hope I'm wrong. And what's happening right now is a test bed, I believe, for America's shaping the battlefield to attack China. And what better way than watching? Maybe America is a puppet master. Maybe they're empowering this little powerful man, Netanyahu, to get some big balls to launch the first tactical nuke. Tell me how I'm wrong.